I believe everybody came with slightly different motives. Um, Luther Hawes was the originator, I think, of the idea, and he called some meetings and had notices in Trinity's bulletin that if we were interested, come on Monday night or something, and a number of people showed up. I think Luther's interest was originally that by having another church in Cape, it would help spread more Lutheranism and bring more people to the church. I think somebody else, Walter Kelpie, for instance, had more of an idea of a mission outreach type church. And the Trinity was so big and set in its ways that he didn't feel that he could accomplish what he wanted there.
When we were going to counseling before we got married, I was going to the Presbyterian Church in Jackson, and the minister at that time said he thought it was beneficial for a couple as a family to go together, and he suggested that I join the Lutheran Church. So that's why I came from Presbyterian to be Lutheran, and I'm still working at it.
But it's only been a couple of years.
But
67.
That's one of the reasons that when we went to the church that we were both members of, Trinity, then I felt lost, because coming from a small church, going to a large church, I didn't know anyone, and I felt out of place. And I told Kenny, I said, I'm just not happy here. And so I said, I think I maybe might go back to my Presbyterian church. So that was one of the reasons we wanted to stay together as a family.
Our first pastor, Pastor Roschke, came here for our 50th anniversary and preached a sermon. He came, I guess, towards the end of 1957. And it's interesting that we first called Pastor Lonhart, and he had just accepted a call to a new congregation in New York and felt that he couldn't change that quick. So he turned us down. He returned our call. Then we called Pastor Roschke. He came here and was here about 5 years, I think, 4 or 5. And then he got a call to Kansas City and left to go there. And we called Pastor Lonhart again. And the second time he came, and he was our pastor for 32 years. And then when he retired, we called Pastor Short, and he was here, 17 years?
17, yeah.
Something like that.
We need to tell you about when we sent our charter into Synod, because that's a story in itself.
We sent our charter in with women's suffrage as a part of it. And as near as I can remember, Synod sent it back. They didn't really reject it. They sent it back with a suggestion that we take that clause out. Well, we had our meeting, and all the women were there as well as the men, and they voted with us, and we overwhelmingly voted not to take that clause out. And so I believe Luther and Carlston Bowensack and maybe B.W. Burke drove to St. Louis and took it back and talked to them and said our group just simply wasn't going to form without that in the charter. And so Synod accepted it that way. And I suppose that was kind of rare for the Lutheran Church at that time. Trinity hated to lose the membership that they were going to lose. As a matter of fact, I think the letter that was on display a few years ago with the release from Trinity of all these people, the pastor said that it was something that they regretted to lose, but they were proud to have seen us start a new congregation. And we had all our meetings in some of Trinity's facilities, some in the back of church, some up at the school, and the Trinity pastor counseled with us and guided us and told us, helped us with the writing a charter and things of this sort. And he said at the time that it was a little against Senate policy for us to send one in with women's suffrage, but he said, you try it and see what happens. And it wasn't covert at all. They as a matter of fact, I remember they all helped in many different ways. Gus Burke donated all the hymn books for our first church. But he was a member of Trinity and didn't leave Trinity, but he wanted to help StAndrew. And there were, I think, a lot of positive reactions, even though, again, they felt a loss in their own membership. I thought I'd mention about our name. I told you Walter Kelpie was the one who wanted more of a mission-oriented, outreaching congregation. And I remember very well at one of our meetings, we were at night, there was no church service or anything, it was Monday or Tuesday, and we were meeting in the back pews at Trinity, and Walter stood up. Most people just blurted out what they wanted to say. Walter stood up, and everybody, of course, quieted down, and we'd been discussing what to name the church, and there were a zillion different suggestions, and Walter said, I think we should name it StAndrew, because Andrew was the first missionary. When the Lord told him to follow him, he said, well, let me go home and get my brother Peter. I've never double-checked to see if it says that in the Bible, but that's what Walter told us, and right away everybody was on board. We'll call it StAndrew. We had the idea that when we reached 300 members, communicant members, then we should start another church, that we shouldn't let StAndrew become another large church. And but things changed. Good Shepherd really didn't branch off from StAndrew, although some StAndrew members went to Good Shepherd. But I think Good Shepherd branched out from Trinity also, as StAndrew did. But our first thought was that every time there were 300 members, we'd start another congregation.
We met at Carpenter's Hall, and it was an old building, right?
Old Jefferson School, right?
Yeah, old Jefferson School building. And we met on folding chairs that clanked and clanked and clanked. And, you know, we had a younger daughter that liked to scratch on the chair, and then we'd say, shh, shh.
She'd take the bulletin and the pencil.
Yeah, and, you know, go,
put it on the chair.
And we had an organist. Virginia Goodwin was our organist. And we had an early pump organ where the organist not only had to read the music, but she had to pump the organ. And we were both in the choir. And the choir was in one part of the building, and the organ was in the other part of the building. And so sometimes we weren't exactly on pitch, but we tried. And
the choir really stood in the hall and sang through the open door. The organ was in where the congregation was.
And Ken remembers that we made our choir robes out of old sheets. We had white choir robes, and the women stitched up some little choir.
They
choir
were just something that with a place for your head, and they hung down about to our waist. And everybody made their own, or their wives did, I should say.
But, you know, that was kind of, we were young and we were excited and we felt good about it. And so that's where it is today.
We've got a lot of memories in this
Let's look at it.
book.
So this is the book, the yearbook, the scrapbook from our 50th celebration.
Yes.
Right, which is about 10 years ago.
Yes, we took a lot of pictures. We saved the covers of the lamplighters, and for each month we had a different theme. Martha and I were co-chairman of the celebration, and we met with Pastor Short once every month for at least an hour and went over the plans. And sometimes we'd see different aspects of it as we talked to him, but pretty well he was in tune with what we wanted to do. And but here, these early pictures are groundbreaking, and then our first service.
And we were on a platform. The choir was on a platform.
It was
and
off
the
a
pastor
flatbed
was on a
truck
platform.
trailer that was pulled in, and a little homemade altar set up there, and a few chairs. And when the choir sang, there were some rickety homemade steps that we all walked up and stood on the platform.
So did the two of you know that when we started our new worship community at Stay, that we did our first worship service on a trailer
Yes,
bed just like that?
You copied that.
We did.
Yes.
We did our best
It's,
to honor that part of our past.
It really is a good thing. This is a picture of our congregation early on. That's the one that Martha and our two girls are on, but I'm inside counting the collection.
You're stuffing money in a shoebox.
Nobody told us that they were getting ready to take the picture. We didn't come out. This is a picture of all of the charter members' plaque. This is something that I don't know if it's well known or not, but the choir donated the money to have this made and put up in memory of Ed Grieving after he passed away. He was a longtime choir member.
I did not know that.
And all the choir members, we didn't know what we were going to do, but we made a fund to do something to commemorate him, and this is what the committee came up with. Here's all of our pastors. The ones that we previously had.
There's the current ones, or the ones that were current at that time.
Yeah. In 2007.
Who's this young guy?
Jim really looks young.
So how old were the two of you when StAndrew was founded? We're in our 60th year, so you were...
Well, in 1957, I was born in 1925, so I was 25 in 1950. I was 32 then in 57.
32.
And she's 3 years younger than I am, so she was 29.
He's better at math than I am.
He did that pretty quick.
We feel like it's a blessing that we've been allowed to be alive this long and to see the church as it has evolved.
I'm not ready to go yet myself, but I know there's a point at which people see that as ready to go.
Well, for the record, I'm not ready for you to go either.
I hope not.
Who will I compare vests and pocket watches with on Sunday mornings if you go?
You know, I had a put down on my vest. The lady that was going to make them called and said she doesn't know how to do the pockets, and she was just going to give it back to us. But Martha found a woman who says she's a tailor,
Okay.
and she's going to do it. So we've got to go to Jackson, get the material, and take it to the other
Okay.
woman.
I
And then I'll have a fancy vest.
Then I have to get a pocket watch just to keep up.
Well, you put that in the church bulletin when it happens.
What's that?
That Kenny Bender now has a vest.
I will find a way.
He's going to wear that to church.
Maybe we'll have to put that in a video announcement. Let's shoot it right now, Elaine. Hi, I'm Kenny, and I just got a new vest.
When we first started and we didn't have a pastor, Synod sent a student down from the seminary every Sunday to preach for us. And we had one young man who came quite a few times, and the congregation just thought the world and all of him, liked the way he preached, liked everything about him. And there was a lot of talk about trying to call him when he graduated, but things like that seldom ever work out, and we didn't do it. But he was, I bet you he was a good pastor somewhere, and he got good practice at StAndrew.
That's great. I'm sure you all loved him well.
It was good. We were happy with whoever was available. They sent different ones at different times, but it was always good to see that familiar face. And that's, I guess, really the whole story of StAndrew. I don't know anything else to tell you about it.
I worry about the future with these kids that do not have any religious training or go to church, because it seems like once they hit college, there's, it's not the end thing to do to go to church.
No, it's in fact the exact opposite.
Right.
We now live in a world where Christianity is viewed with suspicion and what's wrong with you? You're a Christian?
Yeah.
So I think do those things, and then at the end of the day, and I tell people this all the time, we have to trust God. And we have to trust that He's good and His mercy endures forever. You hear me say that all the time, right?
Yes.
We have to trust that God is good and His mercy endures forever, and we have to leave it there. We can't carry faith for our kids or our grandkids or our great-grandkids. We have to do what God has asked us to do of teaching them the faith, and then we have to trust God.
Well, I think that's true about life. You've got to trust God.
Yeah.
Because there's so much division now among our country and among people that,
Indeed.
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 put it on His shoulders.